Hi, I'm Patrick Jagger with Cosmic Alchemist Astrology, and welcome to this video. Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to February 2023. So this is my monthly video for February 2023. I'm going to take you on one of these lengthy monologues and give you my 2 cents about what to expect this month and about all of the symbols and the archetypes working within the astrology. And it'll shed some light on what we're going through individually and collectively. So thanks to everybody who watches this channel, who likes, subscribes, shares, comments on the videos. It's very helpful, very encouraging. I appreciate you. If you're not yet a subscriber, I ask you to consider doing so. Every time I upload, you'll get an alert. So let's get into this. This is an interesting month. I think this is going to be a powerful month. And the interesting thing about it is that there are not many things going on in the astrology. There are a few subtle things going on, but there are not many major conjunctions and alignments, and there are not many spectacular things going on in the astrology, which give us really elaborate, complicated things to think about. Much more subtle this month, but very potent because of not just the signs things are happening in, but the lunar mansions. So if you've not heard me speak of lunar mansions are the 27 smaller constellations that make up the 12 sun signs. So in a given zodiac sign, you have 30 degrees. Well, not every degree is identical, because at a given degree within a sign, a planet will fall into a different lunar mansion, which gives that sign a different personality. So it's a different way to look at things than usual. I really like it. And before I get any farther ahead, I'm going to speak primarily about sidereal visible sky astrology. I do mention tropical astrology. It is a good system. It is an accurate system. But tropical Western astrology is disconnected from the visible sky. What I believe that system to do is that tropical Western astrology tells you about the appearance of things, because tropical Western astrology is very connected to the seasons. The cardinal signs, the 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, so we're talking Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, always fall on solstices and equinoxes. So no matter where the physical constellations, where they process to on the horizon, in the precession of the equinoxes, no matter where the actual physical constellations and sun signs move to, Western astrology is always set to the equinox and solstice points. And this is a handy thing when you're looking at vast amounts of time, when you're looking at how things evolve over millennia. So it's a good thing that they came up with this. And I find that it shows you how things look on the surface. It shows you the appearance of things. Whereas a sidereal astrology, it deals more with the essence and the soul of things. And many people will say, well, isn't that better? Well, it is, but the appearance of things and then the essence of things are often different. So you do have to look at both. So I do like to look at both, with an emphasis more on the sidereal, because I can look up in the sky and say, oh, that's where Saturn is, that's where Jupiter is, or, the moon, or whatever. So yeah, before I get any farther ahead, just wanted to tell people that I'm talking mostly about sidereal, but I do talk about tropical, and I get people in the comments who they'll start telling me, oh, are you talking about the previous year? Because Jupiter's not in that sign, it's in this other sign. And it's like, no, I'm talking about both. But you have to listen, because I will say sidereal or tropical before I talk about a placement. And some people think that Western astrology, tropical astrology, is the stupidest thing ever, and it's not God's system of astrology. And okay. And then some Western astrology fans think sidereal is ridiculous because the position of the constellations are always moving. And it's like, okay, well, I kind of like both. So I'm going to talk about both. So listen to what I'm saying. This may not be the best channel for you to listen while you're like washing the dishes and folding clothes and all that stuff, and still expect to retain what's going on. You may have to listen. So I'm going to warn you. All right. So anyway, yes, not many elaborate, grand, epic conjunctions this month. Yeah, really, except for what? Except for the new moon and then a couple other exceptions. Really not many conjunctions, not many crazy angles and aspects. But where things are happening and some of the planets nearby when certain things are happening, and then the lunar mansions things are taking place in, that's what's making the astrology of this month interesting. So on the surface of it, doesn't look like there's much going on, but then when you read into it, you really see that there is a lot of energy moving this month. And I'd say the highlight here are the moons. So we've got a full moon February 5th, 22 degrees of Cancer, sidereally. That is in the constellation of Hydra. So Hydra is the dark side of the moon. So Cancer rules the moon. So the moon's at home. But it's in its dark side. So it has a very secretive, sort of a serpentine energy. So that's going to be interesting. The energy that I'm sort of ascribing to this full moon on February the 5th, it's like Mrs. Coulter from the Golden Compass. So people in the world who are embracing this energy, we will deal with people in the world, public figures, and then people in our personal lives who are attractive, alluring, seductive. What's the other word I'm looking for? It's a C word. Charismatic. Charismatic. People who are all of those things. And they can look very attractive, but below the surface, there's a very highly secretive, and then possibly selfish, greedy, cruel, power-hungry, fearful, and even paranoid energy under that. Because Hydra, it plays its cards close to the chest. And so people who are under the influence of that lunar mansion, they always have a secret part of themselves. And it's very basic to the way they function. So this will be interesting. I think somebody who everybody thought was Mr. or Mrs. Nice, it'll turn out that they've been up to some things. And some people will just be fascinated by this information, and they'll say, yep, felt like there was something going on. Or they might even be saying, yep, I told people there was something up with that person. And then a whole other segment of the population will be like, this is a bunch of nonsense created by Russian intelligence at the Kremlin to destroy this person's public, reputation. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, people will either flock to this little revelation, or they'll just reject and deny it. And then that new moon on the 20th, that is a very interesting new moon. It's taking place sidereally, 7 degrees Aquarius, which is the natal degree for, United States of America's moon, so the birth moon for United States of America. And this new moon will be conjunct with Saturn. So Saturn, fate, destiny, natural law, all that interesting stuff. And it's in a lunar mansion called Aegion. So Aegion is a mythical abode of Neptune or Poseidon, who's the king of the depths of the oceans. And this energy of this lunar mansion deals with intuitive messages coming to the collective mind. So since it's Aquarius, it's humanity, coming to the mind of humanity. Now, Aquarius is the third house of the United States of America that deals with mass media. So these intuitive messages that come to our individual and collective minds, they won't be pleasant. They're not going to be all smiley and giddy and, new age or religious rainbows and sunshines and Jesus walking on water, But they're going to be things we have to deal with. And we'll be tempted to just run right into our addictions and our fantasies that we use to hide from our own uncomfortable feelings. And that's a choice that we can make, or we can choose to deal with the unpleasantness. And then for some of us, the unpleasantness is actually going to be a relief because we've been waiting for years for the unpleasantness, the real truth, or parts of the real truth, to come out into the light. So, yeah. And some other interesting things going on here this month, too. But, big one here, too, is that in Aquarius, we are going to have, by about mid-month, the sun is going to move into the conjunction zone with Saturn. So as I look, actually, even at the beginning of the month, I would say the absolute limit of a conjunction is 10 degrees, where you actually feel influence. So really, for this entire month, Sun and Saturn are basically conjunct. So Sun-Saturn conjunctions are interesting things. What they do is they juggle responsibility and the ego. So Saturn being responsibility and the Sun being the ego and all its desires. Now, when you look at conjunctions, there's always a ruler of a conjunction. You have to look into the details. So what you do to find the ruler of a conjunction, you see which planet is at the lower degree. And if there are more than 2 planets, you're always looking for the lower degree. That's who's ruling the conjunction. So Sun at the lower degree versus Saturn at the lower degree have very different personalities. So I'm going to get into the very specifics of this a little later. But what we're going to see here, Sun does deal with the ego, it deals with the soul, it deals with rulers in our world. Saturn deals with karma, deals with fate, deals with responsibility, deals with the law in all of its different expressions and permutations. So when you have these conjunct but Sun at the lower degree, you're basically looking at individual people's egos or rulers who are taking advantage of their responsibilities, taking advantage of the system, taking advantage of the law for their own selfish ends. And they just want to use the power and the responsibility that's been invested in them to their own selfish ends. So basically abuse of power. Now when you flip it and you put Saturn at the lower degree, then what you have is you have people's sense of rightness, uprightness, and responsibility driving the needs and desires of their ego. So this is when it's kind of whistleblower energy, basically. Somebody who is in a position to see sensitive information, or somebody in some position of power says, you know what? There's been a lot of bullshit going on for a long time. I'm going to say something. And since this conjunction takes place through Capricorn, end of Capricorn into Aquarius, it may deal with some sort of reversal here. So the first half of this month, when Sun's at the lower degree, still in Capricorn, it's symbolic of rulers using government to use the law and the system, Saturn, to manipulate humanity, Aquarius. But then the changeover happens. So you get into, let's see the very day. February the 16th is when they become perfectly conjunct right on top of each other. And after the 16th, the Sun moves past Saturn. Saturn then gains the lower degree, gains control of the conjunction. So, and then for the 10 days after that, they're conjunct, and Saturn's ruling the conjunction. So the 16th, 17th, that's the turning point in the symbolism, is when you see abuse of power and abuse of the law shift to people in power, people in some sort of position of invested power. Their mindset changes and they say, you know what, I need to do the right thing here. I need to not abuse the system anymore. I need to stop enabling other people, my peers, from abusing the system and manipulating the people. So, interesting little turnover with that conjunction. And again, this is not going to be one of those dramatic things where it's like, oh, JFK Jr., it turns out he's alive and he just sent millions of pages of files to the big newspapers, and now they're all going to run the true story that, so that all these politicians are corrupt, and the 200,000 sealed indictments are going out now, and all the baddies are going to get arrested and taken to Guantanamo Bay. It's not one of those things. That's not one of those things. Nothing like that, nothing similar to that is going to happen for probably another 10 years. I think in 10 years there will be some version of the Nuremberg trials, but guess what? During the Nuremberg trials, when many Nazi officials were tried, many of them were just plain acquitted because they were valuable to the Fortune 500, to the aerospace companies, the technology companies, the medical industrial complex, the entertainment industrial complex, which we call the news media. They were valuable to the intelligence services. They got acquitted. Or all those financial and commercial interests just helped them escape Germany before the trials even started. So couch your expectations. When the Nuremberg Trials 2.0 come, not everybody is going to get brought down by those trials. A lot of people are going to get away. They're going to get repurposed by the new system that begins. And there's definitely something to the whole idea that Russia invaded Ukraine to go seize a bunch of labs being run by the big drug companies doing all kinds of illegal human experiments. I think there's a lot to that, but when all this shakes out in 10 years, in my opinion, the people who are organizing all that, they're going to be too valuable to the commercial and financial interests to get thrown in prison for the rest of their lives. There'll be a new paperclip. The world will be better, but it's not going to be squeaky clean. So we're not going back into the last 75 years. We're not going to have that happen all over again, but there'll be similarities. So don't get your hopes sky high. I'm warning you right now. All right. So that's my little summary. Let's get into the more specifics. If you want to sign off, if your time is limited. Thanks for tuning in. If you've not had a reading with me, I highly recommend it. This astrology is a great way to take a different type of a look at yourself and your life and sort of the cycles in your life and the reoccurring behaviors and sort of events of very similar themes that keep occurring in your life. This happens to all of us. We sort of keep bumping into the same people in the same situations in life, and we say, why the hell does this keep happening to me? Well, it has a lot to do with whether you are pursuing your soul desires of your present life, or if you are still stuck in your past life karma and you're still trying to live as your past life self. So we can go into all that in a reading. I highly recommend it. Anyway, let's get into the nitty-gritties here. So, first big day, February the 2nd. So we've got a trine here. So a trine is when two planets are 120 degrees apart. This is a very harmonious angle. And since I am the king of the tangents, here's a nice little tangent. Have you ever noticed that the words angel and angle are highly similar? I'm sure many of you have. Maybe you haven't. That one actually took me a while. I was like, wait a minute. If I just switch this E and this L around, I can go from angel to angle or angle to angel. Well, when you look at angelic sigils and seals and symbols, what you will find is that these angelic symbols that you use to call upon these angels or demons, conversely, man, I don't think there's quite all that big a difference between the two. It's all perception. But anyway, what you will see in these angelic sigils is that they have planetary symbols in them. Well, isn't that interesting? So, really, when people are talking about angels, in my opinion, they're talking about the angles between planets, which generates a particular type of energy that may be constructive, destructive, malevolent, malevolent, benevolent, helpful, harmful. So that's something to think about. Angels and angles. They're the same thing. Planets are divine messengers because they move around the heavens. They move through all different types of alignments. And the energy that the earth is absorbing from them changes. So every day is a unique cocktail of these planetary energies, these energies from these divine heavenly messengers. So a little food for thought here. But anyway, back to February the 2nd. A trine, 120 degree angle between K2, the dragon's tail, the south node of the moon, and Venus. So K2 is at 14 Libra sidereally, and Venus is at 14 Aquarius. So, what do we have here? Libra is a cardinal. It's an air sign. Brings about change. Cardinal signs kickstart change. Aquarius, also an air sign, but a fixed air sign. So what you have here, you have cardinal air that wants to move fixed air. Fixed, another way to look at that, it's still, stagnant, stationary. So it's basically new thoughts coming in to stir up old stagnant thoughts, basically. So K2 the dragon's tail, the south node, it's all about releasing things and letting things go. Venus is the planet of friendships, romances, diplomacy, social activity, sensuality, all that stuff involving other humans, all types of relationships. Can even deal with the acquisition of wealth, the trading of wealth. So what I see here is that K2, the dragon's tail, is being very helpful. And it's helping us to release relationships or dynamics within existing relationships to make them more harmonious, or just to release those that just don't work for us anymore, that don't serve our evolution. Sometimes we and the people in our lives are moving and growing in very different directions. So sometimes we part the ways very harmoniously and in a well-meaning way, but it's like, I think we're done traveling together. We're not on the same page here. So, one of those kind of times here. Now, the lunar mansions that these planets are in. K2, the south node, it's in Favonius, otherwise known as Zephyr. So basically the god of the west wind. So the west wind, the prevailing wind, comes in and blows the weather out, helps changes to happen. And then that Venus in Aquarius, it's in Aegion. Aegion, that is the abode of the god of the ocean, so either Neptune or Poseidon. So what that lunar mansion stands for, it deals with intuitive insights, intuitive messages that we'd rather not deal with, but we need to. So sort of the inconvenient, kind of tougher truths in our lives. So basically, we're being helped in the best possible way to take a new look at all the different relationships in our lives and see what's really going on within them. And given an opportunity to say, maybe this isn't working for me. Maybe I should end this one or change the dynamics. Whatever the case may be for you. So then February the 4th, I call this the day of the square. So squares are 90-degree angles between planets. And squares sort of bring tension between planets. And what they do is they catalyze and they basically force action. So a lot of the time in life, different situations, we drag our feet and we kind of over prepare. We know we need to act, but we say, oh, I just want to do this one more thing to get prepared. And so we get in this cycle of basically preparing to prepare. And life will often intervene and say, no, you're going to act right now. You're done preparing, just do it. So squares are basically about this. So again, February 4th, two perfect squares, planets, two pairs of planets on the same degrees, 4 signs away, creating that 90-degree square. So one of them, you got Uranus squaring the sun. So sidereally, Uranus is at 20 Aries, Sun is at 20 Capricorn. So, and Uranus in Aries, it's in Hades, so god of the underworld. And this dealing with things that we'd rather not deal with. That's what god of the underworld is all about. You've got these deep wounds, these hang-ups, time to deal with them. And then Sun is in a lunar mansion in Capricorn called Apollo. Apollo is the god of the sun, god of light, healing. Apollo shines his solar light and reveals information. So with this one, what we're seeing here on a personal level, we're basically seeing our egos, so the sun, our egos, our desires, our souls our sense of ourselves, our sense of self is being shaken up, turned over on its head by Uranus, because there are things sort of lurking within the depths of our being that we have to heal, we have to fix, we have to deal with. So that light is getting shined onto that Uranus and Hades from that sun and Apollo. And it can be kind of unpleasant and blinding, but it's all for the best. Now, on the world scale, I think this is world leaders having the spotlight shined on them and basically having their world rocked a little bit. So, like I said, it's not like, the whole Q thing where the sealed indictments are going out and, 1,000,000 of the worst people in the world are going to get arrested on the same day at exactly the same minute. And, they're all going to get taken to jail by the goofy people who like to put on their judge robes and, try people in absentia in somebody's house. Who's that guy, Robert David Steele? Nothing like that. But there's just so much the media can't hold back anymore. So we'll get new glimpses of that. That's pretty cool. And then the other square going on the 4th, you have Mars square Venus. So Mars 17 Taurus, Venus 17 Aquarius. So Taurus, fixed Earth. You got Mars there. Mars is fire. Mars is action. Mars is the fire under your ass. So Mars is basically getting this stubborn, fixed, kind of inert Earth energy stirred up. But it still is a fixed sign. And then Venus in Aquarius, so it's an air sign. It's fixed air. What you have here, I think you got fixed Earth and fixed air. You've got this square. Neither one of them want to move. Fixed signs love the status quo. They love to just do what they're doing. So the way I see it is basically people just want to think about this fixed Earth, resources, wealth, business leaders. They want to just keep thinking about these things, Aquarius, air. They want to keep thinking about these things the way they always have. And when we're in times like this, you have to let go of your desire to think about things in yourself and life and money and resources in the world the way you always have, the way your parents have. Some people get very good at this and they feel accomplished at doing it, but the world changes and you just can't keep doing that. So I think this is highlighting some real stagnation about the way we the people think about resources, wealth, money, business leaders, all that stuff. So, Mars and Venus square, this basically, Mars is looking at Venus and basically shaking the harmony, shaking the rug and disturbing the harmony. And Venus is like, no, I just want to think about how much money I have and how amazing all these pleasures I have at my fingertips are. And Mars is like, no, fuck you. Can't keep doing that. And then, too, Mars is in a lunar mansion in Taurus called Pasiphae. Pasiphae is the Vedic, it's called Rohini. It's in basically the moon's favorite lunar mansion. It's the lunar mansion of the moon. Pasiphae is basically a lunar goddess who's one of the daughters of Helios, the sun, who would reflect her father's light. So it's all about all of the finery in life and enjoying sensual pleasures in the best quality, but it can be kind of snobby and it can be just very high on itself about, what amazing circumstances and luxury it lives in. And then where Venus is in Aquarius, that's that Aegeon. So that's that deep ocean home of the god of the ocean, that brings the unpleasant intuitive insights that we would rather ignore. So this is a day where we're thinking about, what it's a day to really think about, especially the last 3 years. What sort of wealth and power has been consolidated at the expense of 99.999% of the world by just a very few people who've pulled off this scamdemic and who are trying to pull off this great reset and have been pushing the needlecraft in order to try to alleviate this social security crisis that's wrapped up in this currency crisis. So, yeah, interesting little day of the square. Then we come to February 5th. So again, that's that full moon, 22 degrees of Cancer. So, it's in a lunar mansion called Hydra. Hydra was a three-headed beast that was, I'm thinking of Chimera with the three heads. Hydra was basically a monster that Heracles, aka Hercules, had to fight as one of his 12 labors. So the Hydra was a serpentine being that had 100 heads or more. So Heracles was like, oh, okay, I'll just kill it. I'll just cut the heads off. Well, every time he cut a head off, two would sprout in its place. And he basically said, wow, this is just not happening. So he got some help cutting the heads off and cauterizing them, burning them so they wouldn't grow back. So cauterizing is an interesting sort of medical procedure. What you do is you burn a wound to stop it from bleeding. Does a little cleansing too, but primarily it's about the bleeding. It's about stopping the bleeding. So, yeah, this Hydra, it's Mercury ruled within Cancer, the home sign of the moon. So Hydra deals with the dark side of the moon. It's deeply secretive. The moon is a life giver. The moon has a very nurturing maternal energy, but within this lunar mansion, secrecy is kind of the bottom line here. And like I mentioned before, the way I look at this, it is kind of an archetype you can use for this constellation Hydra. It's Mrs. Coulter from the Golden Compass. If you haven't seen the Golden Compass, watch it. It's a great movie. It deals with, I think, why the whole HARP machine was made, why Bill Gates wants to block the sun, why the needlecraft was pushed on us. So this is the power of myth, mythology, and fiction. You can read hundreds of pages of reams of data and make yourself fucking crazy and unground yourself doing that. But also feel like, you're kind of a smarty pants because you comb through all this shit. You can quote it chapter and page and verse. Or you dive into the power of myth. You deal with archetypes, which are the skeleton key to everything. And you can make connections a lot faster. So watch the Golden Compass. So anyway, yeah, this Hydra, it's like Mrs. Coulter. It's the Mrs. Coulter archetype, played by Nicole Kidman in that one. So series is really good too. Different cast, but really good. So Mrs. Coulter, she's charismatic, attractive, alluring, seductive, very sexy. And many people probably, really most of the people, the vast majority of the people she interacts with, they fall for it. And they're like, oh, that Mrs. Coulter's so stylish. Oh, she's so attractive. She's so intelligent. And, since Hydra's Mercury ruled, intelligence. So, oh, that Mrs. Coulter. But then more discerning people are like, man, that woman, she's hiding some seriously dark shit. She is manipulative. And when you say no to her, she is Nasty. So that's the energy of this Hydra here. So this Hydra, on top of all those attractive, sexy qualities, highly secretive. It functions by having a secret part of its life. People under this energy, they have a secret part of their lives that nobody gets to see. Doesn't matter how close you get to them. And this can be frustrating for people. So, highly secretive, and it can be greedy, selfish, cruel, fearful, paranoid, power hungry. And it's interesting too because this whole thing about the Hydra, that is one of the analogies, one of the archetypes that is used to describe the corporate control grid in the world. So, and that's, again, this is what deep state is. It's a network of corporate powers, of corporate financial, commercial powers. It's not some, especially during the 80s, these dingbats like Fritz Springmeier, with the bloodlines of the Illuminati book, and, the David Icke talking about the 8-foot walking crocodiles running the planet. It's like, no, it's not all about drinking baby's blood and hailing Satan. It's about money. It's about money. How do we get more money? How do we get more power? Every single year, how do we get more money? How do we get more power? Now, many of these people do pledge themselves to secret societies and, unseen powers, but that's your ticket to the game. That's how you get through the gate and get to your seat. You have to do this because these secret societies allow people to have an insurance policy on you so you don't betray the interests of the group. It's not the main event. But in the rituals that take place, yes, you can basically imprint ideas into people's minds, and you can basically build a back door into somebody's mind. So yeah, it's multi-purpose. But really the bottom line is about how do we make more money this year and make more money next year, more money next year. So yeah, this corporate control grid symbolized by the Hydra, it's got 1 million heads. So it's not like people think. Like you can't put a bunch of former special forces, Navy SEALs, whatever, commandos together and be like, oh, we're going to go take out the Illuminati. It's like, yeah, good luck. Because for any member of the Illuminati you can take out, there's 100 people who can take their place, do their job just as well as they can. What you have to do is inoculate yourself mentally. You just have to not want anything they can offer you. That's your fucking way out. So they've built a comfy world for us peasants where you can have pensions, you can have retirement funds, you can have multiple houses if you play their game, you can have a job where everybody respects you, and you can basically be a local aristocrat, a local member of the gentry as long as you play their game. Well, that keeps their game rolling when you play it. So if you stop playing it, if you go out on the limb, that is the way that you take their game down. You don't do it by violence. They have a monopoly on violence. They can do it better than any one of us because they're organized and they got all the money in the world. So don't even fucking go there. So don't cut the Hydra's hides off. Don't cut the Hydra's heads off. Stop feeding the Hydra. So yeah, the Hydra, the grid of corporate control through the world. So Hydra deals with information. It deals with information coming to light that people who embody and embrace this secretive Hydra energy, it deals with information coming out that they don't like. They don't want coming out. People who are symbolized by this Hydra archetype, they use all of their wit and intelligence to hide things from people. And one of the things they do is they donate to charity. And they're like, "Oh, I just care so much about these orphans in Bangladesh. It's my greatest passion in life. Running a multinational conglomerate pales in comparison to helping these orphans. They're very fucking smart. They know how to pull on people's heartstrings and look pretty and attractive. But again, when you get a full moon here, a full moon is a solar phenomenon. It's when the moon is fully reflecting with all of its possible surface area that we can see the light of the sun. So it's like a giant spotlight. So some information will come out about people who've been playing this Hydra game. They want to look kind and intelligent and worldly and witty and attractive and well-schooled and cultured and, whatever other bullshit they're peddling. But they have this whole secret part of their lives. So this is very likely to happen in our personal lives, but then some world figure who seems to be very nurturing and kind and caring, they're going to have some crazy shit come out. And it's going to be like, wow, that person was up to that. A lot of people will say, wow. A lot of us will be like, yeah, I told you. It's like, you can't take people at face value. You got to look at what they do. You can't just listen to what they say they do and what they're all about, which we've all been raised to do. So this information will likely come out. Some people will be just fascinated and they'll be like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. Other people will be like, no, that was made up by Vladimir Putin and Russian intelligence to make this nice person look like a dirtbag. And it's like, okay, well, have fun with your denial. So, and some other aspects of this Hydra energy. Think about the way snakes eat, right? Snakes swallow things whole. You watch them eat, they swallow like a rat, and like the snake's body's all bulged out and it swallows it really slowly. Well, snakes' eyes can be bigger than their stomachs for their capacity to swallow. Sometimes they have to spit things out. And when people try to act like snakes like this, sometimes they choke and they can't hide everything. It's like, a snake swallowing something. You might imagine it's almost like when a possum hides, but its tail's sticking out, right? And the possum's like, I'm hiding, you can't see me. And it's like, well, your long skinless tail's sticking out. I can definitely see you. So people who are embracing this, snake-like energy, they use their wit and their intelligence to hide the things they don't want you to see. But sometimes their eyes are bigger than their stomachs and they can't swallow it all. They can't hide it all. So there could be some sort of indulgence scandal going on here. Somebody was indulging in some form of, I don't know what. Prostitutes, crack smoking, BDSM, pedophilia. Who the fuck knows? Beating up hookers, It's like the whole Hunter Biden thing, right? I went to prep school for 5 years. A lot of those kids went to Ivy League schools like Yale. Hunter Biden went to Yale, went to prep school before that, right? A lot of great people in those schools, don't get me wrong. Some people think, especially people watching this channel, some people are like, oh, those millionaires and billionaires are such horrible people. Oh, fuck them all. And it's like, well, you've got your share of POSs in that social strata, but you got a lot of awesome people too. You always have to remember that. All of our births, well, I was going to say they're accidental. They're not accidental, but amnesia is part of our human condition, right? Your soul incarnates on Earth. So things do seem accidental. And, and until we start digging into life and understanding karma and the soul's journey, we say, well, I didn't choose the circumstances of my birth and my life. Well, neither did they, but they did, and you did too. We all chose it. You just don't remember. They're in the same boat. So you just can't hate on people because they have money. But if people have a lot of money and they're assholes, well, their degree of privilege makes it a lot easier to make fun of them. Don't get me wrong. So the whole point to that, in that strata, this, very wealthy prep school, Ivy League strata, there is a segment of those people who are always misconducting themselves. They're always overindulging. And they're influential and wealthy or powerful parents, their planets do help them cover up sometimes. But their wealthy, influential, powerful parents often have to help them clean up after their messes. That's the whole Hunter Biden laptop thing. He lost control of the laptops because he didn't have his daddy cleaning up after him. And then his whole, getting the strippers pregnant and the girlfriend throwing the gun in the trash and the Secret Service having to investigate it. And he's a flaming shit show on wheels. And he starts so many fires, his father's handlers can't clean them all up all the time. And, one slips away every now and again. So that's the kind of stuff we're looking at here to come to the surface. What else did I want to say to that? Oh, yeah. And then Hydra, too, runs on Kundalini energy, okay? Kundalini, the serpent force. It's the serpent force of your personality. Your personality, it's made of a foundation of sexual energy. That's what Kundalini is. So Kundalini energy is not, it's about creativity. Sexuality is a form of creativity. And this is why sexuality is such an important thing. This is why so many religions and social movements and political parties throughout history have tried to hijack and take over and either suppress or intensify people's sex drives, because if you can control somebody's sexuality, you can control them. And when their sexuality has been repressed or traumatized or in some way, altered unnaturally, it affects their personalities. So they can have very out of control, aberrant personalities, or they can just have no personalities. This is especially when you look at like religion and different political movements. Some of them have tried to just erase people's sexuality, because sexuality gives you the ability to fight back against tyranny and fight back against abusers. So Kundalini is that energy, that creative energy, that sexual energy, that energy that helps you to know who you are and have an identity so you can fight back if need be, but you can give to yourself, you can give of yourself, and you can create things. So it's a major blessing and a major asset. It helps you to unify your worldly self with your divine self. But if you abuse it, you really widen that gulf between your personality and your divine self. So how you treat that Kundalini energy, it basically determines the fate of your life and your spiritual journey. So we'll see something with the abuse of that energy. All right, let's move on. I've been rambling. February 15th, Venus at 0 degrees Pisces. This is Venus's sign of exaltation. So, and that's a double-edged sword. In Pisces, Venus understands relationships and creativity and all that stuff, all the things that it stands for. But it's exalted, so it's a celebrity. It doesn't want to work hard. So having a Venus in Pisces can actually be really challenging for relationships, because one of the things that happens is Venus is one of the gurus, one of the teachers. So people can sort of feel like, they're basically having to deal with friends and romantic partners and family members who it's like they kind of have to treat like children, because it's like they're in a different space mentally, but that's what they end up attracting. So people can find themselves, so Venus is going to spend what, good part of a month in Pisces. So that could be a feeling within our dealings with people. All right, now the next day, that is that Sun-Saturn conjunction. In the Muses, lunar mansion, the Muses at 3 degrees Aquarius, sidereally. So like I said, planet of the lowest degree rules a conjunction. So in roughly the what? Yeah, well, 10 days, because the sun moves a degree a day. Absolute outermost range of conjunctions, 10 degrees. So the 10 degrees before the 16th of February, Sun is at the lower degree, so it's lower than Saturn, it's 10 degrees away. The dimmer switch starts turning on. So Sun, figures of authority or our personal egos, using Saturn, using the responsibilities of Saturn, the law, obligations, using all that stuff potentially for its own selfish ends. That can be good if you're not being abusive towards others. Now, February 16th, they become perfectly conjunct. And then the 17th, the sun moves higher, so now Saturn's in control. So then Saturn, obligation, responsibility, duty, will be ruling the desires of the ego, the sun, and then even world leaders to get something meaningful done, something that's not abusive, something that considers the well-being of others. So, and now for America, since this Aquarius, this 3rd degree of Aquarius, where Saturn will be the whole time, since it's in the 3rd house of mass media, we're going to see this in mass media. I think after this change takes place in the energy of this conjunction on the 16th, we're going to see how people in power within the media, people in government, were using and abusing their power, their office, their responsibility, and the power invested within them. So that's one to look for. In that lunar mansion, the Muses, it's all about works of writing and music and art and creativity that tell a message. So yeah, this message will be coming out in some way, shape, or form. Not in a way that the whole world will just believe, like the headline, Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor, everybody go to war now. Not like that. The world's divided. It'll continue to be so. Okay. February 18th, Neptune coming to its home sign in Pisces, 0 degrees. Interesting one. And along with that, when Neptune comes to 0 Pisces, Venus will be at 3 Pisces. So Neptune and Venus will be pretty much conjunct. And some days before that, so a few days before that, they were conjunct. Now, the thing about Neptune and Venus, Neptune is a higher octave, a higher version of Venus. So Venus does deal with love, but also deals with lust, with sensual carnal pleasure. Neptune is different because it deals with unconditional, divine, universal love. So they're 2 different versions of the same thing. they're in Pisces. Now, Pisces, there's a lot of for better or worse with Pisces. Because Pisces can deal with universal love and compassion, because again, it is the home of Neptune. But it can also deal with martyrdom. So Pisces is the ruling sign of Christianity and Islam, because those religions were founded during the age of Pisces. And what they deal with being stuck in that Neptunian energy where you're just always playing the martyr and laying down your life, and you're never giving anything to yourself that you need. You're just like, I just need to follow the rules in the rule book, aka Bible, Quran, right? I just need to follow the rules in the rule book so that we can go back to the Garden of Eden and everything can be wonderful, and God will stop punishing us for being the impure pieces of shit that he created us to be, right? So yeah, Neptune, it's part of the spiritual evolution, because you leave the conformity of Saturn, you go to the rebellion of Uranus, you find the universal love of Neptune that tempers the rebelliousness of Uranus, but then you have to go to Pluto. Pluto deals with your traumas that you have to resolve, but more important than that, it's your soul's journey. So you have to keep going till you reach Pluto. You get to that soul's journey. You can self-actualize. You can live the desires that your soul came here to live. You can really be the authentic you. So Venus and Neptune and Pisces conjunct, it's like, that's good, because that can really shed some compassion, some caring energy into the world. But don't let it take you too far, because that's what it does. That's what these religions do. Christianity, Islam. And then all of our modern political parties, political movements, our modern science, all outgrowths of those religions. You know, atheists are not as clever as they think they are. They're an updated version of those religions. So yeah, the thing here, it's don't sacrifice yourself. The last 3 years has been with the needlecraft. There's been this huge opportunity to sacrifice yourself. And, you know, when Saturn comes to Pisces in a few years, I think this thing will really be wrapped up, and Saturn will kind of say, oh, thank you for your sacrifice. But Neptune and Venus can either help you to see through this illusion that's telling you to sacrifice yourself for the good of the World Economic Forum and, you know, the rest of deep state, or it can help you to double down on that. So something interesting to think about. Okay, last day I want to talk about, but a big one. February 20th, new moon, sidereal, 7 degrees Aquarius, conjunct with Saturn within 3 degrees. Saturn is at the lower degree. The new moon again is a conjunction, a little planetary battle between sun and moon. 7 degrees. Saturn's at 4 degrees. Saturn is going to rule this new moon and rule this conjunction. Pretty neat. Pretty interesting. It's in the lunar mansion of Aegon. Aegon's ruled by Rahu. So Rahu, the trickster. The revealer. Rahu is Loki. Rahu is Lucifer. Lucifer, Rahu, Loki, Luca, the word it all comes from. It deals with the lightning strike that starts a forest fire. And forest fires are not acts of Satan that happen to take away your beautiful American dream home. Forest fires burn dead wood. They do this to keep the forest healthy. So it's all about burning away what no longer serves evolution. These trickster gods, these Lokis, Lucifers, Rahus, they catalyze evolution when the status quo gets stagnant. So that's the ruling planet for this new moon. So 7 degrees Aquarius, as I mentioned, it's the USA's natal moon. USA's natal moon, 7 degrees Aquarius, sidereal. So Aquarius, it's all of humanity for the world. For America, it's the third house of mass media. Very interesting. So again, a new moon is a portal. It's a new portal of being and perception and consciousness that you can step through. Now, with Saturn ruling this, being in the conjunction at the lower degree, 3 degrees, it's pretty tight. To me, Saturn is basically saying enough of this media bullshit that's fooling the people. Because, America, where America goes these days, the world goes. And America's like the last domino to fall with this whole corporate hydra, global corporate hydra control grid. So this is Saturn stepping in. Saturn, again, the judge of the cosmos, the law enforcer, saying enough of this bullshit. Here's something to look at and think about if you think that you can just take the world at face value. So, again, happening, USA's natal moon, Joe Biden's natal K2. So that's interesting, with a Neptune at 0 Pisces. So again, let's look at that 7th degree of sidereal Aquarius. Aegeon. It is the undersea home of Poseidon, aka Neptune, the god of the deep ocean. Deep water, deep ocean, it deals with deep emotion, deep unconscious emotion. When you look at a tsunami, it's like a burst of energy that comes out of the deep, comes out of the emotions that hits dry land, it causes devastation. Basically, deep emotion coming out and saying, you can't avoid this any longer, I need you to deal with this. So it's a way to think about that. And the god of the ocean with his trident could shake the earth. So yes, this ruler of the deep emotions is basically saying, I've got something for you to deal with. Can't put it off any longer. Good luck. So with this Aegeon, it rules deep, off-the-wall, intuitive messages. So it's like the, what do they call this? The Cassandra principle, the Cassandra complex. So Cassandra was a figure in the Greek myth Homer's Iliad. So the Iliad, at the end of it deals with the sacking of Troy. So all through the Iliad, you're dealing with the Trojan. Well, actually, it doesn't even deal with the sacking of Troy. Actually, the Odyssey just refers to it. Excuse me. So the Iliad deals with the Trojan War, deals with this 10-year siege that the Achaean Greeks conduct against the city of Troy in Ilium, modern-day Turkey. So all to do with basically breeding rights with Helen, because her bloodline was actually highly sought after. That's a whole other topic. But anyway, so Cassandra, she was the Trojan king's daughter. She was Priam's daughter. She had a gift of foresight and prophecy. But nobody wanted to listen to her because they just wanted to be optimistic all the time. Optimism is very important, but you have to balance it with limitation. So optimism is Jupiterian. Limitation is Saturnian. You have to balance the two. Otherwise, you're way out of balance. Either you're flaky or you're a Debbie Downer. You got to have both. So nobody wanted to listen to Cassandra. And she said the famous quote that a lot of people know is, beware Greeks bearing gifts. She knew the Greeks would give a gift that would be the downfall of the Trojans. And they gave the Trojan horse and the the Trojans, their patron was Poseidon, the god of the ocean, who his totem animal is the white horse. So they built this wooden horse and they said, "You were so awesome, we couldn't beat you. Here's a wooden horse in honor of Poseidon." But he had a bunch of Greeks hiding inside it. And the plan was that they would sneak out and open the gates to the city while the Trojans got drunk at the celebration. In the Greek ships, they pretended to sail away, even though they would come back in the middle of the night. So, yeah, nobody wanted to listen to Cassandra, and they blew her off to their own destruction. So, yeah, this Aegeon, this lunar mansion, it deals with deep, intuitive insights that we don't want to deal with. And we will be tempted to just divert ourselves into fantasy of, oh, no, that can't be happening. No, that corruption can't be happening because my parents taught me that the American dream means that the news tells the truth and politicians are good people and people with nice houses are good people. There's that fantasy, And then when it comes to addictions are not just drinking and smoking or shooting or snorting something or eating something. People who don't do drugs or drink, they can be like, "Oh, I don't have any addictions. I don't do drugs or smoke or drink." It's like, well, no, there are plenty of addictions. Consumerism is one of the biggest addictions. It's like, don't feel good, go buy something. Don't feel good, buy a bigger house. Don't feel good, buy a more expensive car. Buy another house. All that kind of thing. People are sex addicts. People are porn addicts. People are gambling addicts. So they can gamble on scratch tickets, on the stock market, on horses, on real estate. The addictive impulse will just lead them to gamble on something because it gives them a rush of dopamine and it keeps them from dealing with their feelings and dealing with things they don't want to deal with. So we have all the temptation in the world to hide an addiction and fantasy as unpleasant, intuitive insights arise and come to mind. And another form of addiction too that this Aegeon deals with, because it is the god of the ocean and these deep unconscious feelings, or it's the abode of that god. Another temptation and addiction that we can divert ourselves into is carrying the burdens of others. So, this is an interesting thing with all this media stuff that's going on with this new moon. One of the things, especially on the left, in Western media, one of the things people do in order to be able to tolerate themselves more is they get into the oppression fantasy. So they find a group of people, or they're given a group of people through news media, and the media says, look at these poor oppressed people. You should bend over backwards and give your life up to help these people. Or you should just watch this television day after day and feel bad for them. And this is really where the whole phenomenon of white guilt has come from. So Western left-leaning media has convinced millions of white people for years to hate themselves and be like, I'm such a piece of shit for being white. Did you know you're a piece of shit because you're white? Because you're part of a group of oppressors? That is an escape where you're not really carrying the burdens of others, but you're doing some half-assed version of that just by jumping on a bandwagon. And you are sacrificing your energy to it. So yeah, I guess you are carrying a burden. So yeah, don't fall for this shit. Yeah. Nobody is part of an oppressive group because of their color, race, ethnicity. There are oppressors in the world, but it's it's a small fraction of 1% who own everything, and they'll do anything it takes in order to keep what they own and to own more. So yeah, don't carry other people's burdens. You have enough of your own to carry. You have enough of your own inner work to do. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's been a mouthful. Thanks for tuning in. And I'll be coming back at you. Have a good one.